Determination to get this thing cleared up as quickly as possible.
At that time, George Oldfield, his health was declining badly. We didn't know, and I don't think he appreciated, how badly his health had gone.
Eventually, Oldfield suffered a heart attack and was removed from the investigation. The team was taken over by a new boss, Assistant Chief Constable Jim Hobson, in an attempt to reinvigorate the investigation.
So Mr. Hobson takes over now from Mr. George Oldfield. But can the hunt at last be successful?
I'm certain it can be done. The morale of the force is very high, and despite what people say about public confidence, I'm sure that we've got the confidence of the public behind us.
But, as if to torment the new team, Sutcliffe immediately struck again.
So last week, Jacqueline Hill became the 13th victim of the Yorkshire Ripper, and police here have no doubts that 10 of those killings were committed by the same man. So in 5 years of looking for him, what picture have they now built up of Britain's most wanted man? He has a strong Wearside accent. His letters show a peculiar sloping style of handwriting, suggesting he's slightly brighter than average.
For Wearside Jack, this latest stream of murders had proved too much. His dangerous game had gone horribly wrong. Panicked, he contacted the police to confess.
It's a hoax! The tape! It's a hoax!
A great amount of calls and letters were still coming in at this point, and this was another call. This was a matter of him ringing in and saying the tape is a fake.
The Ripper, the recorder. Tell him it's a fake.
He didn't qualify that with any supporting information, which meant that it could have been taken more seriously. And again, why did he do that?
Unusually, the final part of this confession was recorded.
Tell him it's a fake.
What's the fake?
The tape recorder.
What one is this? The one that you just received?
The Ripper, the recorder.
Did the magnitude of what he'd done, sending the letters in the tape, derailing the inquiry to such an extent that they were hunting a killer from Sunderland, did the magnitude of that hit him then? How's it going?
He's seen this massive police effort in Sunderland to find out who sent this tape and thought the net is closing around him. And was it a case of calling off the dogs because he saw that the net was closing and that the chances of him being caught were increasing?
Distressed by what he'd done, and realizing the seriousness of his actions, the hoaxer tried to commit suicide, throwing himself off the Wearmouth Bridge. A passing boat broke his 100-foot fall, and he was fished out of the water by a police launch. Ironically, the most wanted man in Britain, the man who had claimed to be the Ripper in 3 taunting letters and a tape, had ended up in a police station in Sunderland. He said nothing of the hoax, and was sent home. By 1981, Wearside Jack had gone to ground. The Yorkshire Ripper, however, was still at large. But now, in its 6th year, his reign of terror was also about to reach its endgame. On the 2nd of January, Sutcliffe went on the hunt for his 14th victim.
Sutcliffe picks up a prostitute. She takes him to a driveway of a large, unoccupied house that was being used as offices. He's talking to her when a passing police patrol decide to just check on this vehicle.
We were patrolling an area where prostitutes frequent. We saw a Rover car parked. We approached the vehicle, made certain enquiries with the force control. As regards the vehicle, it came back that the vehicle was bearing false number plates.
Sutcliffe gives them some cock-and-bull story about having had an argument with his wife and wanted to go and pick up a prostitute but didn't really want to be found, and therefore he'd stolen the number plates.
Realizing that he was about to be taken into custody, Sutcliffe asked to be allowed to urinate and in the process dumped his hammer and knife behind an oil tank. The police arrested him for theft and usage of false license plates, completely unaware that they had just apprehended the Yorkshire Ripper.
It was decided that he would be charged with stealing the number plates, but because of his manner and evasiveness, they were not satisfied and stuck making inquiries and interviews all day.
Now, unfortunately for Sutcliffe, one of the men who'd arrested him was an old-time copper, and he suddenly felt compelled to go back up to the site where they'd arrested him, begin poking around, and sure enough, he found the hammer and the knife that had been dropped. And that really was the beginning of the end for Sutcliffe.
After finding the hammer and knife, the Ripper squad knew they were onto something. Sutcliffe had, by this point, been left waiting for hours and had become increasingly agitated. He suspected that they'd been back to the scene of his arrest and that his murder weapons must have been found. Sutcliffe's own paranoia would result in an astonishing confession.
What about Yorkshire Ripper? Well, it's me.
Once it started his voluntary statement, and in fact I made my mind up it was him. Whatever he said, I'd made my mind up it was him.
I remember hearing, and like everybody else, was staggered that he'd, finally been arrested. Elation in a way that, this man has, now stopped in his tracks, and it was finally resolved.
He is being questioned in relation to the Yorkshire Ripper murders.
After an intense and dramatic 5-year investigation, the Ripper squad had finally got their man. Bradford lorry driver Peter Sutcliffe was the Yorkshire Ripper.
And I can tell you that we are absolutely delighted with developments at this stage. Absolutely delighted.
But there was still a problem. When questioned about the letters and the tape he had supposedly sent, Sutcliffe adamantly denied sending them.
I saw the letters and the tape as a diversion, something that directed attention from me completely. I thought that God had intervened. I saw it as a sign to carry on.
Peter Sutcliffe was charged with 13 counts of murder and sentenced to life imprisonment, with a recommendation that he never be released.
Can you tell us whether he has a Geordie accent?
I cannot tell you that because I've not heard him speak.
Can you give us any...
Interest in Wearside Jack was overshadowed by the relief that the police felt, having finally caught their man. Officially, the Hoaxer case was still open, but the investigation was wound down. The police were keen to draw a discreet veil over the disastrous bungle that allowed the Ripper to continue his killing spree. Dick Holland would become a scapegoat for the investigation. He spent the rest of his career as a uniformed officer in a remote Yorkshire village. His old boss, George Oldfield, would never recover. Humiliated by the Hoaxer, he died just 4 years later in 1985. The mystery of Wearside Jack, however, continued to hang over the memory of the Ripper investigation. Until this year, when 25 years after Sutcliffe's conviction, the police reopened the book on the Hoaxer case. Using the latest technological breakthroughs in forensic science, they were finally able to crack this great criminal mystery.
Now, yesterday I understand that a 49-year-old man was arrested here in his home by detectives who travelled from West Yorkshire, and they arrested him on suspicion of attempting to pervert the course of justice.
Following the conviction of Peter Sutcliffe for the murder of 13 women, the Yorkshire Ripper went down as the most infamous serial killer in British crime history. But one missing piece of the jigsaw remained: the hoax, a fabrication that had led directly to the murders of 3 women. Although the police closed the book on the Ripper Hoaxer, leaving it unsolved, it continued to fascinate the public. In 1998, the Sunderland Echo ran a 20-year anniversary feature asking, who was Wearside Jack?
Absolutely flooded with calls, with letters, with information, not just from people who wanted to say, oh yeah, I remember that time, I was working here, that and there and everywhere, and I remember the tape. People were actually phoning in and saying, I know who it was.
I'm Jack.
The question of who did send the letters and the tape was unfinished business. Unfinished business for West Yorkshire Police.
Not quite sure when I'll strike again.
The Wearside Jack story would not go away, and for the police, this had become an increasingly embarrassing situation. In response, the West Yorkshire Police Force reopened the case, ordering a major audit of all archived evidence.
We're fairly sure that the original letters and the envelopes were destroyed following fingerprint testing because some heavy-duty chemicals were being used at the time, which actually turned the paper black. And we were satisfied that when we'd gone through all our material, that we didn't have the letters or the original tape.
Despite this loss of most of the original evidence, a trawl through the boxes and bags of what did remain turned up a tiny portion of the envelope in which one of the hoax's letters had been sent. The police knew that the sender of the letter would have had to lick the envelope to seal it. But was it possible to extract a DNA sample from a 27-year-old mix of spit and gum?
We knew that with modern-day science, we had to have a good chance of success here. Low copy number is cutting-edge DNA science, and it's where you can actually draw DNA from something as small as a speck of dandruff or even the moisture from a fingerprint.
The DNA was put into the police's national database, and incredibly, an exact profile was found. It was 1,000,000,000 to 1 that this wasn't the profile of Wearside Jack.
My first question was, where's he from? And Peter said he was from Sunderland, and at that point I thought, this has got to be the guy.
Now, yesterday I understand that a 49-year-old man...
West Yorkshire Police not saying anything more this morning. Their brief statement last night that a 49-year-old man had been